Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Stand Alone, where we go from being ordinary to extraordinary. In today's world, I think all of us are very attuned to the fact that part of being successful is our level of being prepared. And so for us, we have a special guest with us today. This is the CEO of Galileo. So, Brett Miller, you have been establishing, yourself in the world that a lot of us I think take for granted. Me coming into the business world, um, when I went to school, we didn't have the internet. We looked up things on the encyclopedia, and then it slowly started to trickle in where we would get access to this thing called the internet. And then we would leave books and we would go to this source of information. And then when I got into business, I just walked into a world where everything was on the internet. Everything was, really at the tip of our hands. And then when COVID happened, it just got us even more dependent on technology, and it allowed us to expand and to grow. And for me, the way my brain is I'm always thinking in polar opposites. So I'm able to have two opposite thoughts in my mind at the same time, which I think is of a great benefit because it makes me never ever want to get dependent on any one thing on planet Earth. And so I love that we're having this conversation today because it's going to be just kind of like a wake up and a shake up for everyone that is really just thinking like this is normal. If we've ever heard the saying, like a fish doesn't know it's in the water, because that's just all it's ever known. And for a lot of people, Brett, that are growing up in this world of just such hyper dependence on information through the cyber world, it makes us very vulnerable. So I thank you for being here today to talk to us, because if we're going to lead an extraordinary life, we have to appreciate what we have, but we also have to have a heightened level of preparation so that we can win no matter what. So I want to get a background for you. Like, if you can just kick us off by, what is your background? What brought you into this arena of starting your company, Galileo? I want to know why you called it that. And then also, if you can just elaborate, like, what in your history made you see this as a world problem today that you want to be a part of the solution of?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you having me. Just for clarity, I didn't actually start the company. I took it over about 2 years ago. The company was designed to connect people off grid with information. So if you had a satellite device, the servers that we use and our IP would be able to send information from a laptop to your satellite device anywhere in the world. When I took the company over, that's what we were doing. We have a good base of people that have satellite devices out there. They're either off grid, they live somewhere off grid, or they do a lot of off grid type things, boating, camping, hiking, you name it, hunting, what have you. And then they can get these information and get these alerts to their satellite devices. So they're never out of touch, with humanity, basically, or what's going on in the world. So when I took the company over, I realized that, it's a small portion of people that actually understand satellite communication. They understand, it's a very niche group. So what we did was we developed an app over this last year that actually works to connect to all these same satellite devices, but you can also use it on grid, while you're just kind of sharing with your friends, connect with your family, post to, standard things of social media. However, our app still now connects off grid. So you can set up like a group message with your family, your friends. You can track your family and friends on and off grid if they have a satellite device, or just by their phone if they have internet or Wi-Fi. So what we're doing is establishing these groups, communities, and we're giving people access to information and each other on and off the grid, no matter what happens. Because as we've seen in the past, things are happening. People are losing contact, people are losing communication, and there's also a lot of censorship taking place. And we know that information is key, to survival. So that's the background of the company. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to just interject here for a moment, because when you talk about on grid, off grid, one of the ways that I really understand something is I break it down into like the most basic components. And sometimes we just take for granted when people talk in their language. Um,
Sure.
off-grid, on-grid, we don't really understand what that means. So if you could also explain to us in the most elementary terms, like what do satellites do? Where are they?
Yeah.
How do they help us to communicate? And why do we need to know that? Because if something happens to those satellites,
Yeah.
that's what would make us not be able to communicate. If you could explain it, because you're the expert, not me, that would be great for
Sure.
everyone.
Yeah. So, when I typically say on grid, I'm referring to Wi-Fi or your cell phone, right? Yeah, your cellular connection. Typically everybody has one phone and that uses probably one provider, normally like a T-Mobile or a Verizon, maybe you're an AT&T or something like that. So that's typically your on grid. Now, and this work, your cell phone works off cell towers. We all are familiar with the cell towers that we see everywhere standing out. Some they try to hide as trees and whatnot, but we see them around. The thing about cell towers is if 1,000 people try to make a phone call to that tower will shut down. They're not able to handle high volume calls. So in comparison to that, the cellular or the Wi-Fi, there is the satellite network. Now, there are multiple satellite networks that exist out there. Say Iridium is the largest. They have about 67 satellites in circulation just globally, and then about 7 in reserve, just in case one gets knocked out, then they just turn another one on. There's another company called Inmarsat. They have less satellites up there, but there's still a really great communication network, great platform in the United States. And there's also then, Starlink is doing their own thing. Google is teaming up to launch some low orbiting satellites so they can partner with some phone companies and launch their own phone. So basically, off-grid would be a satellite connection where you're not connected to cellular or Wi-Fi. And then on-grid would be when you are connected to cellular Wi-Fi. The reason we like to introduce this satellite network to people is because, like I said, in an emergency, or just say you're driving through like Utah and you pop a tire, right? I mean, there's no service in large parts of the country. All you have to do is whip out like a small satellite device like this. This is a bivy stick, and then you just download our app on it. And then now you've just basically turned your smartphone into a satellite texting device anywhere in the world. So you can always be connected. So let's say you do pop a tire. You don't have to be stranded out there, right? You just pull out your phone, flip over to Bluetooth, send a message and your GPS to, your loved ones or a tow truck and say, hey, this is where I'm at. I need some help. Come get me. Or sadly, what we've been seeing happen, like Lahaina's, North Carolina's, Pacific Palisades. There's also wars in Gaza and Ukraine, things like this. The first thing to go in any of these scenarios is communication. The very first thing, right? You lose your access to your phone, you lose your power, you lose your ability to connect with the ones you love or to call emergency services, right? You pick up your phone, you dial 911, it's a busy signal. That happens in every movie, every time there's a problem, because that's really what happens. So what we want to do is just empower people. We want to get these devices into their hands. We want to educate them, and we want to show them that, hey, it's really easy. I'll give you this, a $300 device. I'll give it to you for free. You just pay like a low monthly satellite credits, everything's rollover, that type of stuff. So it's not a very expensive venture, and it works just with your smartphone. So this way, you're never left without the ability to contact the ones you love or somebody that can come and help you.
Yeah, I think this is a very powerful conversation. What made you get attached to this world where you're just, hyper aware of what's going on, and then also like you want to be a part of the solution for everyday people? Because,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of us think, well, these are things I don't have to think about. Like they're, you know, God forbid anyone still thinks I'm going to rely on the government, but
Right.
some people
Yeah.
still do have that sick mentality, and they're still thinking like they're supposed to take care of me. Yeah, not so. But,
So,
how do we have and build a community of people that, where our community is protected, which is we the people, and we
yeah.
can make sure that we are operating in a place of not dependent on other powers and forces, because that can quickly shift, that can quickly turn. So what
Yeah.
got you attracted to this, space, and, just what gives you the passion to go hard in this area?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. When I was a kid, I was a Boy Scout, and then I got to be an Eagle Scout. So I learned a lot of the preparedness, survival, how to do things. I was always out and about in the woods without, I'm probably older than you, so I do remember not having a phone. I remember when phones were connected to the wall and they had a long cord. I did also live without the internet. I'd be a trillionaire right now if I'd invested in like Facebook or Google or one of these things, but that's okay. You know, you live and learn. But you know, so in high school, I was an Eagle Scout, and then also did search and rescue. So we would go out and find downed airplanes. We'd find stranded hikers, stranded climbers, you know, and people caught in blizzards. So I did a lot of that type of stuff. And I would see, without even really thinking about it, you know, I mean, people could not contact people, right? They couldn't get help. They couldn't call. We'd be out searching for people, you know, looking like, hey, we think they're in this area, but we have no idea. So we would go and like try to find people in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
You know, so I've witnessed it firsthand when people are off grid, you know, and hurt or dead because they were, you know, they bled out or not able to, you know, take care of themselves, and then or contact someone. And then I joined the Marine Corps after high school, and I was a grunt military guy, just, you know, blowing things up and shooting stuff. But then I ran comms for the company. I was a company radio guy, RO. So I did a lot of communications with like PRC 77s and SINGARs, which are big, giant radios, but they're encrypted. So I started doing a lot with encrypted communication and things like that. Yeah, and then I got out and didn't really think about it. Moved to LA. I was doing a whole different thing. And then, you know, the COVID came and censorship came and shutdowns and, you know, lockdowns, and all of a sudden, you know, food scarcities and shelves are drying up and all, you know, it just kind of clicked in my head like something's missing. Like our ability to communicate, our ability to get information freely, to share information freely, or to get resources, you know, to contact someone like, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? Like it was very limited and shut down. So this opportunity was presented to me through a prayer, believe it or not. And then I met the owner of the company at the time, and the company was struggling. And I was actually pitching the idea to her friend without knowing that she actually had this company. It was just something that I had been thinking on. So then she just kind of looked across the table and was like, hey, I have that company. It's struggling. I'm going to give it to you to run. You know, if you can help me fix it. So that's how I ended up doing this particular job. But I did have a background in communication, off-grid, survival. And then I also like going out hunting and doing things like that. So it's all kind of fits in the vein of, you know, look, if you don't know how to stop a wound, stop your finger from bleeding, you will bleed out and die. If you don't know how to, you know, put a splint or, you know, wrap your hand or create a splint on your leg, if you break your leg or something, you're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're not going to survive. You have to be able to understand how to, one, take care of yourself. And two, if you don't know how to take care of yourself, you have to be able to get in contact with somebody who can come and help you. And, you know, you witness that kind of stuff firsthand. And then, you know, it starts to impact you in your life. And yeah, so that's where I'm at. You know, we're putting this together. I really want to get this information in people's hands. I want to show people that it's very easy to, you know, get the basics of how to take care of yourself. It's very easy to set up these groups and these communities within your network, within your family and your friends. And, you know, we have the tools and the tricks to do it. So that's where we're at, just trying to educate people right now.
Yeah, I think that's key for your business really excelling. Just getting the message very simple, and
Yeah.
then making sure that you can like just give that quick education to people, which is why it's important to, you know, just get an outreach to different audiences. Because sometimes we're talking in an echo chamber and we're just talking to the people that already know about this, but you'll be amazed at how many people don't know. Even like high performers, people in business, we just really sometimes take for granted. And that's what I love doing, bringing completely different topics to people. And people like you that are just extraordinary in your ability to take your past and what you've trained and your competence, and then people that have character, and then they attach themselves to the business world, and then get, you know, behind products that can serve the masses in a very powerful way, which is what you're doing, which is so great. So you said something there and you kind of like went over it very quickly, but these are things that matter to me, because whenever I meet people, I'm always assessing, like, are you a person, like, what is your want? Like, what is it that you're looking to do? And then why, you know, what drives you? When you said that, you know, you were connected with this person in a prayer, like, if you could talk about that, I would love to hear about that. A lot of people don't understand that when you have something that is more of a calling, It is so much more powerful than when you're just going through the motions or doing stuff for money. And you're going to make more money. You're going to do better because something greater than yourself landed you where you are. And I think this is a message for people to connect to. So I would love to hear what that
Yeah.
was.
I can break it down. It's a series of events actually that's took place. COVID happened and I was in LA. I was a writer, producer, actor. I was working on films and I was also working in the business world on alternative products and things like that as they were
How
growing.
did you go into acting from the military?
Military.
How does
Yeah.
that even happen?
So, well, I mean, again, it's all connected. When I grew up, I worked in a movie theater that was built in the 1940s. So it was an old movie theater in my hometown, and they would run movies on Fridays. So I just went and got a job there, and then I would sit up in the projection booth and watch movies. And then in the basement, there was all these like old antique movies, these old reels that had been there for years. So I'd watch old videos of like old movie strips of like the Beatles, old Beatles cards. Like I should have saved them all because they're probably worth like thousands and thousands of dollars right now, but I didn't at the time. So anyway, fell in love with acting, the idea of filmmaking, moved out there after the Marines, moved to LA and then did that. But to get to the story, when COVID came, my father was not doing well, and so I was like, hey, I'm gonna LA shut down, everything was done, all my friends, and I was like, basically, hey, we're gonna die here, right? Everyone's dying on TV, so we're just gonna die in LA. That's how it's gonna work out for me, But then that didn't happen, and I was like, all right, I better, go and take care of family now because work isn't really happening here, and I just want to go back. So I got on a plane to go take care of my dad, and he died 15 minutes before my flight landed. And so for there, one of the last things that he said to me on the phone right before that was go spend more time with your kids. So anyway, I moved to the middle of nowhere and I lost my career, my job and everything, but I was gifted a Bible, which I had never read. And I got closer to my kid, my son. And so I was like, all right, I lost everything, but I got these two things. So then I just started reading the Bible and, being a dad. I didn't really know what to do with my life. Fast forward, I'm reading the Bible and I listened to a guy named Edward Dowd. He's doing a podcast. And he says before he read his book, he prayed for a voice. And I was like, well, right before that, I'm reading the Bible and I just needed to know that God existed. I was like, I'm praying and praying. I was like, I just need to know. Like, I need to know. I have to know. And at like 3:30 in the morning, one morning, I got lifted out of my bed, thrown on the floor, and my whole room echoed and said, God loves you. And I was like bawling. The whole thing echoed. It was crazy. I don't do drugs, so I wasn't on drugs. It just happened. And then I was like, all right, well, that was weird. That changed my life. So then I heard Edward Dowd say that he prayed for a voice. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a job at this time. I was living off my savings, doing some odd jobs here and there, just trying to figure out what the next chapter of my life was going to be because I had left, everything that I had known for the last 20 years. And so I prayed for a voice. And the next morning, this guy named Clay Clark called me, who I'd never spoken to before. And he was running an event called the Reawaken Tour with General Flynn, which is basically, educating people, learn about COVID, learn about what's going on. They were very much pushing, for Trump to get back in office because of everything that was going on during the COVID with the administration and whatnot. So he and I just, like I said, I prayed for a voice. He called me the next morning, first time ever. We talked. He's basically like, you sent me some text messages. I got his phone number off the internet and I was just sending him videos and conspiracy stuff. And he's like, what do you want? And I said, I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out. And he was like, well, I like videos. He didn't ask me to do a video. He just said, I like videos. And I was like, all right, I'll do a video for you. So I did a video for him. I sent it to him. It got a ton of likes, ton of things. It's basically just me reading the Declaration of Independence and then with some snarky stuff in there. And he invited me to the show, his show in Las Vegas at the time. And he gave me a backstage pass. He was like, hey, I don't know you. I don't know what you're doing, but I just felt inspired to call you. So come to the show. And then I went to the show. And that's where I met the owner of the company backstage, sitting there just talking with Michael Yon and Ivan Reichlin. So, who I also didn't know. I just sat down and started talking to him. So, I mean, it's kind of a long, weird weave story. It's woven together, but it all came from prayer every single time. So I encourage people to take a step back from society, not put your faith into mankind, but to put faith into your creator. And then to find that relationship, because I promise you that your life will get better if you do, because I'm living proof of it. So,
What's so amazing about your story is that it started with you learning the greatest form of communication you could have, which is prayer,
Right.
to something, so much greater than ourselves, to God. And when you humble yourself to that, and you allow and you ask for that help, which is for a lot of people, they struggle with this a lot, and just you talking about that, I think, is going to help a lot of people, because when you look at it, it seems all strange, but it's just perfectly woven to like allow your life to come together if you can just have that communication. And then what you're doing right now is like gifting the ability for us to stay in communication with people. Even that's what movies are. This is kind of like the thread of your life. You're communicating a message
Yeah.
to people through the art of, directing, producing movies, which a lot of people, it's entertainment to them. And if we can just get more deeper as individuals to understand there's a lot more going on, I think that's really great. So that's so nice to hear. And
Well,
I think that's a great thing.
if I could just bookend it too, what I have realized even recently is that, I prayed for a voice for myself. But that's not what I've been given. I've been given an opportunity to give everybody a voice, or to
Yeah.
get communication, to understand, and to always be in contact. So yeah, I take it very serious what we're doing. But we're also a lot of fun. We're a social media app, right? You can post with your friends, you can are adding social gaming. I'm adding internal coins. We're launching a token coin. I'm adding a new AI search engine that's not related to Google or Bing. So you can get free information, legitimate information, and truth. So we have a lot of great things on, that we do. But it is very serious, right? Like what we're doing right now is communication. When you wake up in the morning, you talk to your loved ones, you tell them how you feel, I'd say, watch out, there's a tiger coming. I mean, that's communication too, right? Like everything is the ability to communicate, to send and receive information. That's what we do as humans. So that's what we're just taking that to the next level, and applying it to this smart technology. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's go into, we're talking about prayer, and then let's talk about war. Let's go the other end, right?
Sure.
A lot of people today think about and there's actually wars going on right now, and when you watch the news, and it's very scary, but there's different forms of war that can happen.
Absolutely.
In our cyber world, if, someone is going to attack us and make us vulnerable, could you explain to us like why it's so important for us to have these alternative means to communicate with one another? Because if, if like when an enemy attacks,
Yeah.
they're going to do it from a place of strategy. They're not just going to send military tanks in and, come knocking at your door to hurt and harm you. So what would an enemy do in terms of communication attack to
Sure.
us?
Well, you've already seen it. You've lived through it. You've lived through, the idea that misinformation or disinformation is counter to a narrative. That's information that is, true, but it goes against whatever agenda, those in charge are trying to do. That's a big problem, right? I mean, the Nazis had an agenda. A lot of people have agendas. Mao Zedong had an agenda. So did Stalin. And those agendas don't end up well for people. Anytime democide is the #1 killer in the world, by the way, democide. That's when governments kill their own people. That's the #1 in history. No, nothing else has killed more people than government. So, and that includes wars, right? Because governments decide to fight. It's always, the government that decides to send the people. So, but to answer your question, to be more direct, you actually lived through it. You've lived through the Wi-Fi outages. You've lived through the AT&T cyber attacks. Just, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Twitter was down, right? The Twitter attack hack. That was a state actor. That is an enormous amount of firewalls to get through to be able to attack and shut down Twitter like that, which means it came from a government. It certainly wasn't just a couple of hackers in their basement to do that. And I don't know if you know that, I mean, there's a website called Down Detector. I have no affiliation with that website other than I use it sometimes. But Down Detector will show you on that day, 2 weeks ago, that it was not just Twitter that went down. AT&T, Verizon, who else? T-Mobile. They attacked Venmo. They went after Gab went down. Rumble went down. That was a big one. Everyone's talking about Rumble going down. So, I mean, you can see in communication, like if somebody wanted to just stop you from calling for help or learning something, I mean, they can hack into your phone, they could hack into Verizon, they could just shut the whole thing down, and then, I mean, how many times do you communicate throughout the day? I always stress to people, when you want to like prepare or set a plan of action, just when you wake up in the morning, just take a little piece of paper and a pencil and write down all the things that you use in the first hour of your life, right? What do you use? Do you get a drink of water? Do you use your toilet? Do you take a shower? Do you make coffee? Do you heat anything in the stove or the microwave? Do you call your friends? Do you check the news? Do you turn the lights on? Right? Like, are you warm? So, like, a power outage, or a communication attack, when you make that list and then you associate the items that you use on that list, and then, think about what happens if the power goes out, or, you can't get the water because there's no pump, and you can't heat your coffee, and you're not warm, you're cold, and your food is rotting in the fridge because it's not staying cold, right? So that's like, these are extreme scenarios, but however, it all starts with, what you do on a daily basis and what you use on a daily basis. And I would barter with almost anyone that communication happens within that first hour, that you reach out to your friends, your family, you check the news, you see what's going on. Maybe you check your stocks, you check your bank account, right? Well, let's wake up and all that's gone. Right? You can't turn your phone on. You can't check your bank account. Everything's digital. You don't have the money in your pocket. It's in the bank. Well, the bank's shut down. So now you can't get your money, and you can't call anyone. You can't call the bank because the phone doesn't work. Right? So it's like, once the dominoes start falling in these scenarios, and you had mentioned war, I mean, you look at what happens when that kicks off. Look what happens when floods go through North Carolina, when ice storms go through Texas. It doesn't take bombs or bullets, to ruin your life or to at least cause you a severe amount of inconvenience, right? So, that's all we're trying to do. We want to empower people that, hey, the tools are out there where if they turned all the power off on me right now, I could still eat, drink, stay warm, cook food, do the whole thing, right? I've set my life up like that. I defend myself, defend my friends, my neighbors, whoever, right? So like, I've set myself up like that, but it doesn't do me any good to be alone, right? So what I need to do is set everybody up like that. And I want to set everybody up like that. I want you to feel the empowerment that no matter what happens, we're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. And we pray that nothing happens. However, things do happen. So you need to just be prepared for that. So that's all we're doing.
Well, listen, I think this is incredible. As I'm listening to you, I have a question for you. How do you um, work in this space of making sure that there's so much preparation, and then you're thinking of all the things that can go wrong? And then how do you take care of your mental health to make sure that you're not just like the world is ending right now and I'm hyper, to the fact that like this could all end, and I still have an energy of positivity. I still believe that there is a good God, but he doesn't want us to be naive. And like, what do you do to make sure that you are not spiraling out of control? Because a
I
lot of
don't.
people think
Yeah.
people that are like conspiracy people, which end up to be the truth later on, we're like, we're just thinking about different scenarios, but you have to protect yourself
Yeah.
in terms of not falling deeply into negativity. How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I don't have news or cable, and I don't watch Netflix, and I don't fill my brain with nonsense or
Why?
like,
Why do you not do that?
well, because I don't want to feel, look, so I worked in entertainment, right? And to entertain or to programming on the television, right? So I've done that. I understand that what you're doing is you're initiating an emotional response out of someone. And well, so, right. And it's an escapism. That's what television is. It's escapism. It's someone's going to live vicariously through a character in order to not be in their own reality at that time, whether it's a movie or a television show, however long you decide to do it. That's what it is. Same with like scrolling through Twitter, scrolling through Instagram. It's just escapism. You're just looking for things to fill your mind. I don't do that. I do watch movies. I love movies. I watched some things on Angel Studios. One of my friends is in that new Homestead movie, Jarrett LeMaster, which I'm really proud of him. He's awesome. He's in that movie. So I watched that, so I do
Great
watch.
company that is Angel Studios.
Yeah, they're doing good things. So, I mean, that helps. I don't listen to the mainstream media. I don't watch nonsense and just to answer the question, because I don't want to feel that emotional response in my home. I don't want to feel a horror movie. I don't want to feel scared. I don't want to feel like end of the world. I don't want to feel racism and like, oh, black people hate white people and everyone wants to kill everybody. Like, I don't want to feel that in my home because that's not how I feel, right? I want to be healthy. I want to be clear-minded. And when I do want to learn something, I go to probably 10, I'd say ish, different sites, lesser known sites to try to
You're gonna have to share these with me after.
I
Okay?
will, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, just I just don't listen to the stuff that anyone's trying to tell me. I go and find it myself, and then the true core of it is I read the Bible a little bit every day when I stretch, or sometimes if I just need an answer for something, I'll just open it up just to try to find. I might not get the exact answer, but I will get an answer that relates to whatever the question is that I have, and I don't. I mean, conspiracies do come true, just like you said. It's just a matter of time now, normally like a couple days instead of months or years like it used to be. But if you do read Revelation, none of us make it out of here alive. We all are gonna die. That's the truth. So in the short term, but there is a plan. And to something you said earlier, I think everybody needs to find that connection with their creator because everybody was sent here to do something. I fully believe that this is a test. This is a pass or fail test that, God knew you before you were born. That's what the Bible says, sent you here. And you're supposed to, that's why Satan has dominion of this earth, right? It's very clear that this is run by evil. So evil will prevail. The more evil you are, the more money you'll get, right? But the more you lose your soul. So, I feel like the soul is your deal with God, right? You were sent here to do something to see if you can pass or fail. And, we all make mistakes. I've made plenty of them, you just repent for those and then, continue moving forward. And when you find that relationship with your creator, you will find your purpose. It will find you. It will just all line up, again, that's why I just tell people, I hope people take it. I hope they just go and do it on their own. But, I try to stay as positive as I can in the world, knowing that, yeah, I mean, things go bad quick. So there's no sense in dwelling on the darkness, just preparing to be able to shine that flashlight when the darkness comes. And that's what I would say.
I love this so much. This is to me the essence of standalone. And a lot of people are like, I did a great interview with Seth Godin. He's like a marketing genius.
Okay.
And he was telling me, like change it to like stand alone and stand together. And I was like, yeah, that's what it means. It's not like be alone, isolate yourself, but get connected
Yeah.
to God and deepen your relationship there. And then when you come into the world, you know who you are. You know what you stand for. It's not that you're going against and you're being defiant, but when you live with like in a line to what is right, like to a light, when you go into this dark world, you don't have fear. You don't like bend to everyone and everything and just go with the flow because it's easy. You're able to like live a different convicted life because you know why you're here. And in a world where people are just like, what is my purpose? Let him tell you. You don't need to go and like navigate that. And that's where like, that's a freedom that I cannot explain to people. And
It
when you
is.
have that, that's really what you're giving to people. You're giving them the ability to have their freedom instead of it being in the hands of like AT&T and T-Mobile and all these companies that we can become hyper dependent on, which is so great. You were going to say something, sorry.
Oh no, I didn't want to cut you off. I wanted to agree with you. You're saying it exactly, and I would just say, I learned a lot of things from that Clay is now my friend. But he says one thing he says is you're the combination of the five people you spend the most time with, whether that's in person or in life. And maybe it's not even a person, maybe it's something that you do. Like if you get information from something, that's one of your five all the time. If you watch Netflix, you're a combination of all the things that are happening on that, right? And I think what you were saying is so accurate. God will give you a purpose. He did send you here to do something. And, the more you try to fight against that and be like, no, I'm doing this, the more you'll fail. And, again, I would just point to like I said, the five people, look at your leaders I mean, look at Congress. Do you really want to end up like Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer? I mean, is that your goal? Like to end up like these people, bitter, gross, hunched over, like I have billions of dollars that I've stolen. Like, just like disgusting. You're disgusting. Like, I don't want to be that. I don't think anybody aspires to. I mean, does anyone aspire to be that? And if you do, I mean, sorry, I feel bad for you. So, I think everyone just needs to like take that step back. And like I said, like don't put so much faith in a human, right? They're going to die too. And they've only been here, what, a couple years longer than you. How much do they really know? Most of the time they're just lying to you anyway. See what I'm spitting around. But yeah, give it over to God. Let God tell you what you need to do. Let God show you the direction you need to go in, and it's going to work out for you. I promise. So
Yeah, I always check people's sources. Like, so whenever someone's talking, I'm very well read. So I can
good.
pick up what people like read and where they're getting their information from. But the people that I want the closest to me is when like you are a person whose your source is God. Like you're more connected to that as opposed to like other people's voices, opinions. I'm not into this opinion world. Like I could
Right,
care less what someone's opinion is of whatever's happening in the world. Like it bears nothing on my life.
right.
So, and that's the world we live in. So, and I'm not saying this to put people down. I don't want to be like, self-righteous and make people feel a certain way, but I do feel an obligation to just like wake people up and say like you're so much more than this. Like it is a lot of nonsense in this world. And I think what's incredibly important is when you meet people like yourself that have found their purpose, those things are true. That's when you have like you're bringing light into this world. And it doesn't mean that you're naive and think that, nothing could go wrong. Actually, people that have the most light in their life have gone through the darkest times. And so,
Absolutely.
like, whatever you've been through, because I can tell that you've probably been through some stuff, it's served you well, and you should be like really, really I'm careful with the word proud, but just know like
Yeah.
have that ability to know that like you're doing great work. Where can people find, these products? Where can they find more about what you do? Right now I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking to myself like I don't want to be unprepared. I don't want to be vulnerable. And I don't have to go into these deep dives about like what is going on negative in the world because that's what you're for, Brett. And that's why I love the military. That's why I love people that do all that hard stuff because it
Right.
allows me to be in my space.
Right.
And then that's what community is. Like when everyone's doing their part, we can come together and we can have a healthy network of individuals, but you are doing your part in that space and then we can have the ability to connect with you. Where do we go to get the right tools? What
Yeah.
should we do if we have nothing right now? What are the first things we should get and what
Yeah.
do we want?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great information out there. You can go to our website is galileo.com, but we have a through link, satnews123.com. You can just go to satnews123.com. That's a link to our website. You can download our app right there. I'd say that's step one. Just download the free app, enter your email, and you're set up. You can select the different information that you want to get. And then another, the company that we work with, it's the same owner, is the satellite phone store. So you can go to sat123.com, and sat123.com, we work with them as well. They have all the gear. So if you're looking for like a bug out bag, if you're looking for a solar generator, if you're looking for a sat phone, or you want to get this free bivy stick right here, you just go to sat123.com. You tell them you heard us from Galileo. Tell them Brett sent you, and we'll talk you through it. We'll talk you, they'll talk you through it. We'll talk you through it. Our sales team's there. We also have a chat feature. So I would recommend people that satnews123.com or sat123.com. That's where you're going to get the information and where you're going to get the products. And if you have any questions, you can always just reach out to us. You can call us, send us an email. We're happy to help. We're happy to educate. And this is what we do. We just want to get people to a point where they feel confident and prepared to carpe diem, to go seize the day no matter what happens. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for, just being a good human being on planet Earth. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sabrina. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.